Hi friends! Hello, 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 hello. I hope you all are doing so well. If you don't know who I am, my name is Sam, and it is so nice to meet you. Welcome to today's video. Today we are going to be talking about my IUD insertion experience in great detail. Also, while I tell the story, well, I guess not while I tell the story, but in between I am also going to be chewing on some candy for you all. I don't personally like eating sounds as a trigger, unless the person is chewing with their mouth closed. So I will be doing that today. And feel free to skip past those parts if that's not for you. You will not miss any details of the story. So the candy that I am going to be chewing on today is from the brand Smart Sweets. It is their Sour Blast Buddies. It's low in sugar, plant-based, no sugar alcohols, and gluten-free. And it's also female-founded, so we love that. And in general, it has high fiber, which I like. The only thing is that it does contain citric acid, which sometimes bothers me in my IC, but I don't tend to have a lot of issues if I eat small amounts, so yeah, we're just going to be chewing on that while we chat. So we're just going to start with a couple pieces. This is a blue raspberry flavor, and then this is a lime flavor, so okay, so now we can get into the actual story, which begins kind of far back just because I think my hormonal birth control journey is kind of relevant. So when I was about 14 years old, I had been put on hormonal birth control for my painful periods. And I was on that for a really long time, and I kind of just decided at 19 years old that I was tired of it, mostly because of the symptoms that I experienced on birth control, like the bad side effects that a lot of people get, like acne, weight gain, mood swings, depression, just overall not feeling very good. And on top of that, at that point, with my endometriosis progressing, the birth control wasn't really helping anymore with the painful periods, so I kind of just wanted to quit. I also was just on a bit of a health kick in general, just trying to manage my painful periods in a different way, because at that point I didn't know I had endometriosis or adenomyosis, so I kind of just thought like I had painful periods. And since the hormones weren't really working, at least they did in the beginning, but they kind of stopped working, I kind of thought, well, maybe I should take a different approach and try going more natural. And I would have liked to just go off of birth control completely, but at that point I did need contraception still because I had a partner and I was active. So I was kind of just doing some research, and that's when I came across the copper IUD, which is a non-hormonal IUD. So at that age I didn't really look too much into it besides just like basic research, which now I definitely always try to do thorough research before I try something, but definitely not at that age or back then. I didn't really think too much about it. I just decided I wanted to book an appointment with an OBGYN and, go down that route. So I booked an appointment with the new OBGYN because I had only seen another one once before, and that was for painful sex. And I had a horrible experience with that OBGYN who basically told me I was too young to even be having sex. I was like 17. And he was very dismissive, so didn't want to go back to him. This time I tried a female OBGYN, hoping that I would get a better experience. And yeah, so I booked an appointment with her. So during that appointment, I basically just went in, I sat down, and I said I was looking for a non-hormonal birth control option, and I had heard about the copper IUD, and I was interested. And the appointment was very short. All she basically did was go over all the pros, talked it up as this big, great thing, and, set me up for my appointment to get it inserted. Looking back, there are a lot of things that was wrong with that situation. First of all, she never asked me about my medical history. I just filled out paperwork that new patients have to fill out, and just said in the history that I have a history of painful and heavy periods. But she never talked to me about it. She didn't mention it. And then the other thing that she also didn't do was she didn't give full informed consent about the IUD. So basically, informed consent in that situation would have looked like her giving me the full picture, not just the good, but also the bad and the possible risks and side effects, and basically leaving the decision up to me after hearing all of that. Instead, she was very pro copper IUD. She didn't list out any of the side effects, and she didn't mention, which I learned later, that you shouldn't get the copper IUD if you have a history of heavy and painful periods. She never said anything negatively about it, and I wish she did. So on the day of the actual insertion, she had me come in, and it was her and her nurse assistant who assisted with the procedure. They basically sat me down, told me to undress from the waist down, and left the room. When they came back, the actual insertion began. So they opened me up with a speculum, which was painful. At that point, I kind of just thought it was normally painful, but that's all because of my endometriosis and my high-toned pelvic floor dysfunction and everything. But yeah, any kind of penetration is really painful for me, so speculums are not my friend. My OBGYN didn't really do a lot of talking. It was mostly her nurse assistant that was talking to me, kind of walking me through the steps of the procedure, and also just kind of trying to have a conversation with me to distract me, I think. And I'm not sure if they were actually able to measure my uterus or the length from my uterus, but eventually she kind of looked up and she's like, your cervix isn't moving out of the way. Now, I'm pretty sure you're supposed to schedule your insertion for a time in your cycle where your cervix is soft. I'm not sure if that's during your period or right after or before, but it's somewhere around your period. So it's not like I came in at a time where I wasn't supposed to. I came in at the time that they recommended. So they definitely thought it was weird that my cervix wasn't moving out of the way. And I, was complaining. I was saying it's really painful, ouch, wincing in pain at that point, because they were putting a lot of pressure on my cervix. I think they were literally trying to push it out of the way. And I kept kind of repeating myself. I was sitting there, tears in my eyes. Couldn't bear the pain that they were putting on me by trying to move my cervix out of the way. And at one point I did start to cry, and my OBGYN looked up at me and she said, "Why are you crying? It shouldn't hurt that bad." I told her that it hurt really bad what she was doing. I kind of said oh, it does hurt. I've been saying it's been hurting this whole time. But she kind of just ignored what I said and kept going with pushing on my cervix. I kind of just zoned out because I was so in shock with all the pain that I was experiencing, and that my doctor basically told me I shouldn't be in pain, and I was I just want to get the hell out of here. It definitely felt like eternity, but I think they only were pushing on it for maybe 3 minutes tops. Definitely felt like a fucking long time, but it probably was only like 3 to 5 minutes, if that. But even then, like, in my opinion, if your patient is saying they're in pain, you should stop immediately. But that wasn't the case, of course. So when she stopped, she basically said, okay, your cervix isn't moving out of the way, so we're going to go ahead and send you home and reschedule. This time we're going to send you home with a suppository that will help your cervix soften up before. So, you're going to come in next month at this time in your cycle again, but make sure you put in the suppository. I think it was like the morning of, or maybe 24 hours before. So then I was like, why the fuck didn't you just give that to me in the first place? Why doesn't every person get that in the first place? I don't know, that's just like my opinion. So I remember my mom drove me to that appointment because I wasn't sure if I would be able to drive afterwards, just because of like the pain that I might have experienced after. So I got into the car and I just like broke down sobbing. I was really upset. And my mom was definitely not happy that I was in that state either. But I decided, because I had already paid like $500 for the IUD, that I was going to go back and do it again, and hopefully it would actually work this time. Okay, 2 new gummies. This one is orange, and this one is berry. I thought it was going to be cherry, but okay. So fast forward another month. I did the suppository and I headed to my appointment. So same situation as before. I get there, it's her nurse assistant and her. They ask me to undress from the waist down. They leave the room, they come back, and they start opening me up with a speculum. Again, it hurts. And then she checked my cervix and she said it's definitely softer but still a little bit hard, but I can definitely get past it this time. Again, she wasn't really walking me through the procedure or anything. It was mostly her nurse assistant that was trying to chat with me and tell me like kind of what's going on. But to be frank with you all, I was not paying attention. I was in a lot of pain and I was just really trying to get through it. So she's kind of pushing my cervix out of the way. I can feel it. It's a lot of deep cramping. And I'm once again saying, ow, like that really hurts. Again, they're not giving a shit. And this time she was able to get past my cervix and actually insert it. It did take a while. I'd say like maybe 5 minutes. Definitely again felt like eternity to me, but it was probably only like 5 minutes. Anyways, once the actual insertion was done, she basically just told me I would have some spotting for a couple of days and otherwise I would be good to go. And, to let her know if I had any questions, I could email her or message her through like the patient portal. So this time my mom drove me again, and I got to the car, and this time I was not crying, but I was visibly angry and pissy. And my mom even made a comment because I'm not usually that way. And looking back, I definitely didn't know exactly why I felt that way. I think I just attributed it to, being in pain or whatever, but I think it's more just me feeling violated and uncomfortable and kind of disgusted. There were literally people inside my vagina ignoring me and not taking my pain seriously, and it was honestly kind of traumatic. It was honestly a nightmare. So I definitely didn't have just a couple of days of spotting afterwards. I was heavily bleeding for months after getting that IUD placed. And after a while, I started to also develop extreme ovary pain, specifically in my right ovary. Kind of just felt really heavy and painful. So the ovary pain was pretty alarming, and just being in that state of heavily bleeding for months was not fun. And so I decided to do my own research to kind of look into it, what the possibilities were, and if I should call my doctor or not. And so when I was doing my search, I came across something that said, IUDs have a chance of expelling themselves or moving out of place. I kind of just had like a hallelujah moment, a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, that's definitely what's wrong. It's probably just out of place. So then I rang my doctor and I told her I was concerned and I wanted an ultrasound to make sure everything looked okay. And she refused at first. Told me that it's normal to be heavily bleeding for months, and I guess she just forgot to mention it. And she wasn't really willing to do it at all until I basically begged her, and then she booked me for an ultrasound. So the ultrasound did not show that my IUD was out of place or anything. She actually told me everything looked great in an email that she sent me. And attached my test results and kind of just said if I continue to have issues, let her know. And then I'm really glad I opened the test results because it said at the very bottom that I had an ovarian cyst. She was definitely missing that key detail in her initial email, and if I had not opened the test results that day, I would have never known. And she was very upset when I contacted her about asking questions about what it all meant because it had a lot of medical terminology that I just didn't understand. And so I kind of go into detail what happened after all of that and during all of that in my diagnosis journey video, but basically I ended up needing an emergency surgery eventually for that cyst because it tripled in size in less than a month. And I basically had an endometrioma, which led me to my diagnosis of endometriosis. So, do I regret getting the IUD? Yes and no. No, because it did lead me to getting a diagnosis for endometriosis. I'm not sure if I would have had that cyst without the IUD, and I don't know if I would have ever gotten a laparoscopic procedure done because that's really the only definitive way of getting a diagnosis for endometriosis without the cyst. So I think I'm grateful for that because it gave me answers to all of the pain and weird symptoms that I had been experiencing up until then for basically my whole life. But don't get me wrong, I definitely would never get an IUD placed ever again. Not even the Mirena IUD, which is recommended for people with endometriosis, just because I cannot put my body or mind through that whole process ever again. Again, it was like the most painful thing I've ever been through, and I don't care if there's a gun to my head. I will never do it again. I also just want to say that I am in no way trying to deter people from getting an IUD. I really, honestly, just wish mine worked. It was a really great idea, and I wanted it to work really bad. So yeah, this is just me sharing my experience. If you got an IUD and it's been working for you, I'm honestly really jealous. I wish that was the case for me. And yeah, no way am I saying like don't get an IUD or trying to scare anyone out of it. Just sharing my experience with it. I'm gonna chew on another 2 pieces of candy before we head out. This is lime and lemon. I'm obviously trying to get really sour ones to end it off. Okay friends, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give this a like and a comment and also subscribe to my channel. Be sure to submit content suggestions down in the comments below and also check out the description box to vote on the next video that you want to see next. If you haven't heard already today, I am so proud of you, I love you, and everything is going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay. Bye. 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 Bye, friends.